to Good Game. I'm Hex.
And I'm Bajo.
Well, he's been called amazing, superior, and spectacular, but is his game any good? This week we web-sling our way through the Amazing Spiderman 2.
Hey, how'd you like me to call the Daily Bugle and tell them that Jameson is full of it?
I'm not gonna stop you.
Also, could Wildstar be the game to finally take that MMO crown from World of Warcraft?
Plus, daylight sees you waking up in an abandoned asylum. Never a good start to a game, Bajo.
Yes, well, waking up anywhere that's been abandoned is never a good thing.
What about an abandoned house of kittens?
Well, that's the obvious exception.
I know there's somebody here.
But before all that, can you name the game?
First, let's go dark in daylight. Bajo, you and I love a good scare, so how does being thrown into an abandoned asylum without any weapons and being chased by creepy witch ghosts sound?
Pretty scary.
Yeah.
Oh God, what's that?
Daylight is a first-person survival horror game for PC and PS4, centered around the character of Sarah, who awakens in an abandoned mental hospital with no memory of how she got there.
Oldest cliche in the book, Hex.
Yes, well, interestingly enough, the story was written by Jessica Chobot, who many might recognise as a presenter for IGN, and that annoying reporter in Mass Effect 3.
Seriously? You just doubled my ratings.
But apart from being a bit of a cliche, the plot's not too bad in my opinion. It just isn't implemented well. You're not given enough to do or discover as a player, so the whole experience ends up being rather boring.
Oh, it's so boring. The game's gimmick is based around mazes. Someone can't stop drawing them on everything, and every time you discover a clue, they get burned into your flesh.
Oh my God, no.
Plus, the hospital is one big maze for you to navigate.
I can barely see.
And you know, it sounds like it should be a creepy and intriguing idea. But sadly, its repetitive, unimaginative level design and lack of any real scares makes this a bit of a letdown.
Yeah, it just ends up being more frustrating than fun.
Well, the maze thing just gets old really quickly, doesn't it?
Armed with just a smartphone, which serves as your map, and a couple of glow sticks, which somehow have the ability to reveal clues in a way that all other light sources can't, you set off to discover the secrets of the hospital. Why? Because this strange guy told you to.
This place has been waiting for your arrival. Gather up everything you can. The memories contained within these walls are waiting to be found.
So melodramatic, that voice actor. The memories contained within these walls are waiting to be found. I half expected Count Dracula to appear and some pipe organs to start playing.
There's much to see, much to learn.
Oh no.
Each level follows the same formula. You need to use your glow sticks to find 6 bits of paper or remnants and then find the key room where some weird stuff is going on. But you get a key out of it.
Yes, then you take the key to a special door and do it all again on another floor of the hospital. There is some very limited puzzle solving in the way of pushing a crate or two, but mostly you're just wandering around in the dark looking for glow sticks and bits of paper. It's basically Creaky Door Simulator 2014.
There is some nice spooky ambience to the areas as well, things moving on their own and unexplained banging sounds.
It's very by-the-book horror tactics, though.
Yeah, and I think it relies a little bit too much on this spooky ambience to be scary, and also the remnants you find are a little bit cliched with expected stories from the past. They talk of weird things happening in the asylum, mysterious deaths, and wardens wanting to transfer the hell out of there. But every time you do find one of these remnants, the threat level increases. They attract these shadow women, which at first are pretty frightening.
Yeah, there are some sound cues, and the lights flicker.
Anybody there?
It signals one of these things is nearby and coming for you. You can only be rid of them with flares, which are in limited supply. So for a while there, things get pretty startling as you're trying to find more clues while staying away from scary ghosts.
Yeah, but finding your way through the maze and then getting all the clues and then finding the key and taking it to the door. It all becomes so monotonous that you kind of just become more focused on that than any of the horror or the survival. Plus, yeah, okay, the ghost women can kill you, but they're not that much of a threat ultimately. I mean, often I'd just be wandering around lost and I just sort of mosey on past them. It's a bit like when I try to scare you around the office, Bajo.
You're just not very scary, Hex.
Yeah, well, I guess not. Sadly, neither is this game. Really, the Amnesia series is still the top dog in this genre. The levels are varied, the story is compelling, and the monsters are terrifying. I mean, this just falls flat on both scares and gameplay, really.
And plus, it's also super short, just 2 to 3 hours, which is disappointing. I was excited to see that it's the first game that we've played to use the Unreal 4 engine.
Perhaps not the best game to debut with, was it?
No, it's really just a bunch of dark, dirty rooms. Also, we did have some performance issues, but what are you going to give it overall, Hex?
Yeah, there were some nice elements in there. I like that the mazes were randomly generated, but ultimately there are just other games that do this kind of horror so much better, so I'm giving this one a 4.
Yes, it's short, tedious, and predictable, so I'm giving it 3.
Well, I'm going to go grab a cup of tea while you get ready for your look at Wildstar.
Okay. And now here's Goose with the news.
Really? Nothing?
Thanks, guys. id Software publisher ZeniMax is threatening legal action against virtual reality company Oculus VR. ZeniMax claims that when id Software's co-founder, John Carmack, left the company to work at Oculus, he took proprietary virtual reality technology and know-how with him. Carmack and Oculus have denied the claims and say they intend to vigorously defend themselves should ZeniMax pursue legal action. And in more Oculus-related news, the Norwegian military is trialling a system that combines the VR goggles with 4 cameras mounted on each side of a tank. The result effectively allows for the driver to see through the tank's armour, vastly increasing their situational awareness. The designers say the effect was partially inspired by Battlefield, which gives players a much greater view of their surroundings while inside vehicles. A real-world monument to EVE Online has been vandalised less than a week after it was unveiled. The monument has over 500,000 names inscribed on it to honour every active player as of March the 1st. However, a Twitter user by the name of Gaius Homerson scratched off the name of the infamous player Zenuria and posted a photo of it. EVE developers CCP say they're disgusted by the vandalism and will involve the police. Former Tony Hawk and Guitar Hero developer Neversoft has been merged with Call of Duty developers Infinity Ward. Neversoft had previously collaborated with Infinity Ward on Call of Duty Ghosts. The newly merged Super Studio will simply retain the name Infinity Ward. And finally, in some sad news, Oscar-nominated actor Bob Hoskins has passed away, aged 71. He was known by many gamers for playing the character of Mario in the 1993 film Super Mario Bros. The Movie, which was the very first live-action film based on a game. And that's all the news for this week.
Thanks, Goose. Massively multiplayer online role-playing games take a very long time to develop and are very expensive to make. But if successful, they can generate a lot of ongoing revenue. For example, it's been reported that Star Wars The Old Republic made $139 million last year on microtransactions alone. And World of Warcraft, which is now 9 years old, made $213 million on micros, not even counting subscription fees. For many years now, gamers have been wondering what the next World of Warcraft will be, and no game has really come close. And that's why newcomer Wildstar is so very interesting.
Strange to think that we might just finally get a new home. I wouldn't exactly call myself personable, but I feel like if we all just stick together, we might just be okay.
Smash, Guardian, smash.
The wildlight's got an exile position. I have direct...
Challenge begin!
Wildstar is a sci-fi MMO currently in beta and due for release soon. And the hard part about this beta review is much of what is really exciting about this game is many levels from where I could get to in a couple of beta weekends. So do keep that in mind. Wildstar is made by Carbine Studios, who formed in 2005 with 17 original members from Blizzard. And you immediately feel that in the game's art style and design. It's eerie stepping into Wildstar, almost as if I'd stepped into some futuristic World of Warcraft instance.
can really be hard to let go sometimes.
I think what Carbine are trying to aim for is the MMO holy grail. They don't want to emulate WoW, they want to make WoW 2.0, and they're throwing very big guns at it. There are 2 factions, 6 classes, and 8 races. Having 6 unique classes is a pretty big undertaking for a new MMO on day one, especially when it's got such a PvP focus. On top of each class, you have a secondary path, and this is another layer of customization. It aims to satiate those who like to maybe explore more, or socialize more, or just kill and grind stuff a lot. I experimented mostly with the Explorer path, which, as you can imagine, has lots of exploring, and I love that you've got a double jump. Why have a single jump when you can have a double? There's a definite Guild Wars 2 feel to the movement, which is fantastic. The bigger picture of all these layers of customization is that they're trying to make this game a more personal experience, more tailored to you and more you. From cosmetic appearances, to your mount, to a fairly daunting perk and ability system. They want you to have plenty of your own identity in how you play. And there's just so many abilities to buy and so much to customize. So many quests filling up your log at all times. It's a never-ending to-do list. I need to clear that quest log. I need to do all those quests. I need to be gone, but I know I'll never do it. And leveling up in Wildstar is literally rock and roll.
Whoa, look at you! Wow. Time to crack some skulls.
This is definitely a click-through and collect MMO so far. It feels unashamedly all about grinding up to the endgame. That word grind has such a negative association when it comes to MMOs, but it's not necessarily a bad thing as long as the grind is fun. And so far, the action and quests have been pretty good. Part of that is because of the reactive combat. Abilities hit hard and the action is instantly exciting and accessible. I quite like the creature design too. Oh, sorry, little guy. But what Wildstar does better than the rest is the telegraphing. Oh my. This is the incoming danger lines that appear on the ground in fights. They're a huge part of all the combat and they're just done beautifully. And so varied. Telegraphing in MMOs is becoming more and more common because it works so well in structured group fights, and it's a way to have lots of positional attacks while dancing around thousands of people's potentially laggy MMO connections all at once. I'm surprised we don't see it in more games. Some may say that telegraphing is easy mode, but I don't think so. I think it works for this kind of game with this reticule-aimed combat. And besides, does this look easy to you? I dabbled mostly with 3 of the classes. The Engineer, who can mech it up and blast enemies to bits. The Warrior, who does an exciting dance of blades and flurries. And the Stalker, who's all about the backstabs. It's so nice to play a class that can go into permanent stealth again. I feel like with recent MMOs, that's been put in the too hard basket. And in fairness, it is very hard to have a class that can walk by most enemies in the game completely invisible. Personally, it's the PvP that I'm excited the most about, taking my ability set and gear and facing off against other players in the world. That's right. Proper PvP. In the world. World PvP. This isn't some structured zone where everyone gets to roam around and fight each other if they want to. No. You're gonna get ganked. Finally, it's been so long. I truly believe it's the threat of other players that elevates an MMO from being a cardboard cutout questathon to something far more interesting. And yes, we all remember being ganked and having a horrible time in Stranglethorn Vale in World of Warcraft, but that's the point. You remember it. On top of that, there's balanced team-based PvP, structured 80-player battles with customizable buildings. Oh, if they pull it off, I'll be in competitive keyboard bashing heaven. I'm also very curious to see how the telegraphing focus in the combat will work with other humans involved. The developers have talked a lot about their endgame, which is usually lacking in most MMOs. They want the end of this game to really be the beginning of it, whether you play solo, or if you're into very tough 40-person raids. Personally, I'm not sure if I'm ready for 40-person raids again. I have all these memories of sitting down for 7 hours with no toilet breaks fighting the same boss over and over. Maybe 7 years ago, but today, there's so many other distractions and games and MMOs. But they certainly do look impressive, so I'm curious, and they want to focus on all of the classes having something to do all of the time, instead of just healers spamming one button for 8 hours, for example. There's lots I haven't gone into, and we will go deeper come review, such as owning your own house and customizable hoverboards. But there are some concerns as well, and I think the biggest is the cartoony art style. I'm sure many players won't be able to get past that. The Exile starting area is particularly oversaturated with green, and to be honest, it was quite horrible to quest in. It did get better past level 7 though. The starting area of the other faction, the Dominion, was much better from the get-go. I also like their starting quests more too, which encapsulate their evil regime.
Yes, I detect potential in this one.
Also, the game's quest tracking is a bit confusing, especially in the game's tutorial area, of all places. Things feel a little cluttered on screen too, and I found it quite hard to see my friends without putting ugly markers on their heads. But that just might be the getting used to it stage of an MMO. Right now, I've only seen a small portion of this world, and I am very curious about the game, but I'm not completely sold yet, especially with that subscription fee model, which is always a downer. Most of all though, I'm just afraid of liking it too much and getting lost down that MMO rabbit hole once more.
I was doing work experience as a kid, and the first ever thing I animated in the games industry was a pufferfish for Sonic 3D on the Mega Drive. My job was to, whenever you went near this pufferfish, then you kind of start off like a little sausage and then just went, and then just kind of expanded and then would go back. That was the very first thing I ever animated. So yeah, that's my claim to fame. I worked on a Sonic game.
Many games attempt to fill their worlds, levels, and landscapes with as much detail and lore as they can, and all in an effort to give you, the player, as much information about these worlds as possible. But there's one world from one game that isn't populated full of people, it isn't covered in cities or towns, yet it's one of the most captivating and emotional landscapes ever created in a video game. It's an empty land, it's an ancient land, it's the Forbidden Land. A mysterious world made up of interconnecting environments and contrasting landscapes, what little information that is known about the Forbidden Land is cryptic at best. Why it exists, or even how it came to be, are details lost eons ago. Now, all that's left are the crumbling remains of monuments to ancient civilizations, who left behind with them a stern warning. It is said that if one should wish it, one can bring back the souls of the dead, but to trespass upon this land is strictly forbidden. Disregarding this warning, the player enters the Forbidden Land via a giant raised bridge, and immediately the sheer scale of the landscape becomes apparent. This is an old, peaceful land infused with history and ritual, and it's forbidden for a reason. In the centre lies the Shrine of Worship, a ruined temple that acts as a hub for the many different pathways and trails, each leading to their own unique environments. Beyond that is unknown. No signposts, no location markers, no quest givers, just bleak expanses of fields and howling sounds of wind, emphasising your isolation and violation of this untouched world. It's hard to shake a strong feeling of melancholy and loneliness while in the Forbidden Land. You may have the company of a loyal animal by your side, but with no one to really share in this painstakingly beautiful landscape, you truly end up feeling all alone. With little more than a beam of sunlight as your guide, you're gently coerced away from the shrine towards lush forests, empty ruins, rocky mountains, and temple-ringed lakes. And each of these interlinking areas are home to the ancient dormant creatures known as the Colossi. These towering stone giants each reflect characteristics of their own separate environments, often comprising of parts of the landscape in themselves. Their imposing size eclipses the player, immediately creating a sense of fear and wonder. However, just like the haunting landscape that surrounds them, the Colossi are far from the real danger. In the end, clumsily clambering all over these majestic creatures and the landscape they inhabit is the unavoidable consequence of your journey into the Forbidden Land. It's a bittersweet world that can't be appreciated unless it's explored, and it can't be explored without being desecrated.
There's a new Spider-Man film, so of course we have the obligatory tie-in game of the same name, The Amazing Spiderman 2.
Yes, it's not very amazing though, is it?
No, not really.
We quite liked the last Spider-Man game. Sure, it had rough edges, but the charm of swinging around an open-world Manhattan and fighting epic bosses was undeniable.
Hey, come back! I'm pretty sure he's talking to you!
Such good slinging, Hex.
Yeah, but this feels like a poor copy-paste job of that, with most of the good bits removed. Let's take a look at the story, which, to be honest, is a bit all over the shop.
Hey! Check that out.
It begins with Uncle Ben getting shot in the first film, and then fast-forwards to somewhere in an alternate version of the new film. Spidey is trying to hunt down Uncle Ben's killers, but of course soon comes up against a range of villains trying to get in his way.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mess, isn't it? And none of the actors are from the film. Spidey doesn't even look like Andrew Garfield.
No, I mean, I can imagine.
Cutscenes are also poorly written, and their acting and lip syncing is pretty woeful.
There's so much to learn.
It does feel quite dated though, doesn't it? Especially on next gen and PC.
Yeah, I think the city itself looks okay, but the loading hex is just everywhere. Hello 2008 called. It wants its loading times back.
Snap.
I went there.
Why can't you and the Russians play nice? Huh?
Also, the way Spidey is constantly overacting and moving around really started to grate on me. Why are you clinging to that? Just stand on the floor and talk like a normal person for 3 seconds.
They've also put in these interactive cutscenes where you can choose which questions you want to ask. They are absolutely pointless though. They don't reveal anything extra or interesting, so there's no benefit to asking any of them. They're just an excuse for stilted dialogue.
You feel better?
My husband's still gone. I think that'll hurt forever.
At least it gives you the option to skip them.
Swinging through the city is still easily the best part of this game.
Before you could just attach webs to the sky, but now you actually have to sling off buildings.
Yeah, and that's how it worked in Spider-Man 2, which I think we can all agree was the best Spider-Man game ever. This time, the extra complexity they've worked into it often made it feel a bit clunky. I mean, it may not have been so realistic in the last game, but at least it felt smooth and cinematic there.
And now it's unrealistic in a different way. The laws of physics and momentum obviously don't apply to this Spidey.
Forward and back. Yeah.
It's like he's controlling gravity with his mind, Hex.
Amazing. Out in the open world now, there's also a kind of morality meter. If you do little side quests and help people, you'll become a hero. But if you ignore them, you'll become a menace and authorities will start to give you a hard time.
Just felt like busy work to me, having to run around and stop all those crimes before they expire. And there's not much variety to those missions. You'll mostly either beat up car thieves or rescue hostages from cars. That first hostage rescue was pretty exciting though.
Yeah, but those photo side missions are really silly. You find these police cars with laptops on their hoods and a police officer standing next to it. Then you walk up and take a photo of the evidence on the laptop right in front of the cop.
Now that's a beautiful shot.
That's some fine police work, officer. Keeping the city safe. Combat is basically the same from the last game too, borrowing from the Arkham style of upgradable attacks and counters. But it doesn't really come together. You end up just mash attack and counter when the red flashy things appear.
One of the biggest letdowns is that the boss fights are so terrible. All the bosses are just human-sized opponents with really repetitive combat sequences. I mean, remember those huge epic bosses from the last game? They were great, but there's just nothing like that here.
Yeah, this is a pretty classic case of movie tie-in-itis, I think.
Yeah, I want to say something nice about it because I feel like we've whinged a lot.
Well, I did like the variety of costumes. They all come with their own stat boosts, and that was a nice touch.
Yeah, I guess. What are you giving it, Bajo?
Well, there's not much reason to play this if you played the last one, so I'm giving it 4 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Yes, it's the amazingly average Spider-Man, so I'm giving it the amazingly average score of 4 as well.
Hex! Crime! So did you name the game for this week? It was, of course, Spider-Man on the Atari 2600 from 1982. Not unlike the original Donkey Kong, Spidey had to scale a building to stop his arch-nemesis, the Green Goblin, from causing chaos. And not only was it the first Spider-Man video game, but it was also the first game to feature any of the Marvel comic characters.
Next week, we take a look at the brutally difficult action RPG Bound by Flame.
Plus, we round up a few of the more interesting recent mobile games, including Hitman Go.
Over on Spawn Point, our show for younger gamers on ABC3 this weekend, we rewind, flip it and reverse it with NES Remix 2.
So until next week, Bajo out.
Hex out.
That's how you scare someone.